You're injured in a crash that wasn't your fault, but your own insurance company pays some of the bills. And now you're wondering, how does this impact my case? You might have heard of medical payments coverage or MedPay or even something called PIP, but you're not sure what any of that means, why it's involved, or if the other driver still has to pay. And if you don't understand how MedPay impacts your lawsuit, you could lose compensation that you're legally entitled to. I'm Chad Romey, and this is Chris Blackburn, and we're personal injury lawyers here in Indiana, and we handle cases like this every day. This video breaks down exactly how MedPay affects your accident claim, what insurance companies won't tell you, and how to avoid common traps that can reduce your payout. So you don't leave money on the table, and you don't let the other driver off the hook. All right, so Chris, what is MedPay?
MedPay coverage or medical payments coverage is something that you are going to buy when you get insurance. That's not always going to get it, but what it does is it will pay for medical bills if you or the occupants of your vehicle get into some sort of wreck. So the way I like to explain it is, because a lot of times my clients will say, well, why is my insurance company paying? Or I don't want to use my...
Yeah, like they're offended their own insurance companies.
I don't want to use my insurance shouldn't have to pay. Well, in theory, it's a first payer. A lot of times health insurance or even Medicare will come in and say, I'm a secondary payer in theory, but in practice, it doesn't always work that way. But it is an extra means of insurance to get some of your bills paid. It can be very advantageous, especially if you don't have any health insurance. However, you can only use it, no questions asked, up to the limit of whatever you pay for. So the most common in Indiana is $5,000. I actually talked to a lady last week where she had over, I think it was exactly $100,000 in MedPay coverage.
Yeah, and so that means just whatever your medical bill is, it's going to get submitted to your automobile insurance first.
Yep.
And then your automobile insurance will pay that bill until you run out of coverage, until you've exhausted that benefit. And a lot of people don't even know they have MedPay coverage. They learn about it the first time when they get in an accident.
Oh, 100%. And it's not, I don't think they're conversations that, are coming up a whole lot with the agents that are selling it. I think usually it's just when it comes to the insurance underwriting, it's usually something that's kind of included in the package, if you will. But you can reject it and sign off on it to keep your premiums a little bit lower.
And it's just a little bit. It's not expensive coverage, but usually it's $5,000 of coverage, and $5,000 that doesn't go very far. You can sneeze into an emergency room and they're going to send you a bill for $8,000. So $5,000 just doesn't do a whole lot. And frankly, your automobile insurance usually doesn't even get discounts on what the hospital bill is. And the MedPay covers regardless of who's at fault. Even if you're at fault for the accident and you suffer injuries, you can still use your MedPay coverage.
Yeah, exactly. Or if there's occupants in your vehicle, they can use it as well.
They each get $5,000.
Yep. But it doesn't matter whether you hit a tree and it's just you can, and you have some injuries and some bills, you can use MedPay coverage, or whether you were T-boned at an intersection. It's coverage that's there regardless of faults.
And some clients will say, I don't want to use it, but what you mentioned earlier, sometimes you have to. Before your health insurance will pay a single bill, they want to make sure that your automobile insurance has exhausted MedPay coverage. I mean, they paid the last dime they're ever going to pay. So whether you want to use it or not, you just got to use it.
Yeah, I'd say probably it doesn't happen that often. I mean, in theory, that's how it's supposed to work. They're supposed to be the first payer, and then health insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, those types of things will then come in and pay after. But it doesn't work like that in practice. Usually health insurance will just pay. We actually encourage our clients to hang on to their MedPay and use it for their co-pays and deductibles.
Yeah, if you can do that, if your health insurance will do that for you, then absolutely do that.
Because you're still on the hook for the bill. If you've got a bill after your health insurance pays, this can help soften the blow with the disposable income.
Yeah. In the opener or the lead into this discussion, I'd also mention PIP coverage, and PIP stands for personal injury protection. We're not going to spend much time on it here. It's usually not relevant in Indiana, which is where we practice. It covers a lot of the same stuff that MedPay does, but also a little bit more than that. But again, if you have PIP coverage on your policy, that's going to cover something a little bit different.
It might not come into play if you're a Michigan resident, you get into an accident in Indiana. So there's still going to be some PIP coverage there. You probably want to reach out to an accident attorney who has some knowledge on PIP. We've got 2 lawyers in our South Bend office who have got excellent education when it comes to PIP coverage.
Yeah. And a lot of the pushback that we get or that I will get from a client regarding maybe using their own policy, using their MedPay is they just feel like hey, the accident wasn't my fault. Why should my insurance company have to pay anything? Well, this is the good news and also the bad news. What's called subrogation. So your insurance policy will have a section called subrogation. And what that means is if you're in an accident and there's somebody else at fault for that accident, your insurance company essentially can step into your shoes and recover from the outside or the other party. It's called subrogation. All right. So when you hire a lawyer, we're going to handle that for you. So they don't get to then jump in line and go get their money before your case is settled. So at the end of the case, your insurance company has paid $5,000. That's going to be part of our demand to the at-fault party's insurance company. There's no other hurdles or wrinkles in the case. They're going to pay that $5,000 back. And then you turn around out of your settlement and pay them, I'll say, a portion of the $5,000. And in Indiana, there's certain things that you can use to reduce the amount that you pay. Lien reduction statutes. So you don't pay dollar for dollar, but you do have to resolve that. So your insurance company does get the money back.
It's really interesting because we have this conversation probably on a weekly basis with new prospective clients or even our clients in the beginning stages. They're frustrated that they have to use their own insurance, whether it's health insurance or the automobile MedPay insurance. And so it's a conversation that we have all the time about the benefit of using it. Well, one, you paid for that coverage. So part of your automobile insurance, you're paying a monthly premium for this specific reason. This is what it's designed for. This is how it's used. So you might as well use it. It's interesting because I think the overall connotation is, well, I'm not at fault. I didn't cause this. They should be paying. And it is true that whoever was at fault in their insurance company, they aren't going to pay up front. And in fact, if you go to trial 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, they haven't made a single payment. So in the interim, you've got to get your bills paid.
Yeah. So there are some timing issues when it comes to MedPay.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. So read your policy. So sounds exciting. I think more importantly, just understand that if you're in an accident and you have MedPay coverage, you have to notify. There are going to be certain hoops you have to go through with your insurance company. Sometimes it's going to be treatment that starts within a certain period of time after the accident. And it's really company to company. They all have slightly different language, or maybe it has to end by a certain time. But usually it's the starting time that you have to pursue it. And if you're in a disagreement with your insurance company over what bills need to be paid by MedPay, you can sue your insurance company. And that typically has to be done within a certain period of time, sometimes by contract, but at the very least, the earliest it would be 2 years from
This
this.
is a good time to segue into why would your insurance company, your own insurance company, fight with you about some of the bills that they want to pay. So let's say you've got
Use your client who just had $100,000.
$100,000 in coverage. Okay. That's a lot of money. And insurance companies are, of course, scrupulous. I mean, not all of them. Some will just pay it, but they're going to do some sort of internal review of the treatment to make sure what bills are getting they think are related to the accident. And if they think that this isn't related or there's a pre-existing condition, what they're probably going to do is start challenging some of the bills under the policy. They'll ask our clients to go either be seen by a doctor or they'll get an internal record review from a doctor who may say, well, this isn't related. And then they'll want to cut off the treatment. Let's say they paid $20,000 at that point. Well, what they're trying to do is save
The next 80.
save the next 80.
Yeah, I mean, if you have 10 surgeries in the emergency room the day of the accident, they're going to write the check, right? And that $100,000 is going to be exhausted.
Then we go.
But it's really when you get into that ongoing care where you got the pre-existing stuff where they say, hey, maybe this isn't related to the accident anymore.
Great time really to consult with an attorney. If you haven't at that point, we start getting into a lot of more client engagement conversations at that point, because under the policy, if they want to conduct an independent medical exam, contractually, they have the right to do it. We can talk to our client and maybe we can agree to or not. Most of the times, my thought on that is we're not going to, because it's not a doctor we may be familiar with. And so we would feel like the opinion is going to be bad. What it does is then if we don't comply and cooperate with the insurance company, they're just going to cut off MedPay anyway. So it's kind of a cost-benefit analysis at that point. So it gets really interesting, especially in a case like that, where how does that impact what evidence could be heard at trial or just trial in general? So
Yeah, so most cases are not going to end up at trial, but that's how we evaluate every case. We evaluate what if a jury was hearing this. When it comes to MedPay coverage, usually the jury is not going to hear that medical payments were made by an insurance company because an insurance typically is not allowed to even be mentioned in front of a jury. Sometimes you are just in front of a jury in a case against your own insurance company, and obviously insurance is going to be mentioned then. But the insurance company, if they've paid for $80,000 worth of medical bills already, they're going to ask the judge not to allow that to be heard by the jury. The plaintiff to be able to say, hey, they've already paid for this. Now they're arguing it's not related. So, and I think usually that probably is inadmissible, but we would argue that it would be.
Yes, I'd agree on that. There are certain times, unique scenarios. So I could think of a client of mine years ago. She had a policy with Indiana Farm Bureau. In Indiana Farm Bureau, she had $100,000 in MedPay coverage, and Farm Bureau actually paid for her back surgery with a doctor in town who related the surgery. The trial was going to be against Farm Bureau only because the defendant's insurance company didn't have very much money.
The at-fault party.
The at-fault party. So it was really unique because Farm Bureau was, again, this is her own insurance company who had paid for the surgery under a different part of the policy, was arguing that the surgery wasn't related. And so at that point, my strategy was, we need to get as much documentation as possible to show that Farm Bureau paid for it, and then try to really paint the picture that Farm Bureau is the bad guy. And they paid for it, and now they're saying it's not related. The case ended up selling, which is good, but I wholeheartedly believe that the jury would have heard all of that evidence regarding who paid the bills and then why Farm Bureau was taking the position or stance that they did at that point. I will tell you, though, Farm Bureau generally is one of the best insurance companies to work with.
They are. I like them a lot more after you sue them. Well, you just get to a different set of people that you're working with, and they're usually pretty experienced. So, do you really want to stack the deck in your favor? Don't miss our next video. 5 secrets to double your car accident injury settlement. Trust me, you'll want every tip in there. The doubler. Before you talk to an insurance company or sign anything. Click right there so you don't leave any money on the table or make a costly mistake.
See you there.